There is a famous quotation which says, nations are seldom born in peace. And so was the story of India's partition. Welcome to another new podcast by me, Ranganathan S. Venkondala. I talk to you about different topics of Indian history, India, and things that are important for you from a neutral perspective. Pakistan, a rather very interesting story. The story of Pakistan, or the idea that Muslims need to have a separate nation for themselves, comes from the 1875 Aligarh Muslim University. Sir Syed Ahmad Khan, one of the foremost proponents of the two-nation theory, or the first advisors of the two-nation theory, actually gave this concept. Now, what was the premise of this idea of Pakistan is pretty simple. See, in 1870s, there was a unique problem which was going through India. While Hindus had a middle class, Hindus benefited a lot from the British rule, particularly being a majority population, a considerable majority population in the British cities of Madras, Bombay and Calcutta. Now, Hindus adopted English education from 1813 and onwards. Hindus learned English law, adapted Indian Western philosophies, Western ideas, Western thought, Western sciences. Whereas the problem with Muslims was Muslims had a very conservative approach to modernism. Now, what I mean by conservative approach? In UP, Saharanpur, there was Darul Uloom Deobandi movement. In Delhi, there was the Shah Waliullah's Wahhabi movement. Both of these movements actually encouraged Islamic conservatism. Now, what do I mean by Islamic conservatism? Where both these ideas or both these socio-religious reform movements wanted Islam to revive back to its original form. They wanted Muslims to only attend madrasas. They wanted Muslims to only be part of the main school Islamic Quranic teachings and completely avoid any contact with the British or the British systems or the British government. Whereas in India, it was not that concept. We had people like Rajaram Mohan Roy, Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar, Mahadev Govind Ranade, Gopal Ganesh Agarkar, Jyoti, even people like Jyotiba Phule and Savitriba Phule. They wanted Indians to adapt the Western philosophy, Western sciences. They were not encouraging Indians to give up completely their Indian culture or Hindus to give up their Indian culture, but also encourage Western thought process. So while among the Hindus, socio-religious reform movements of the mid-19th century were extremely nice and positive. They meant for taking the good of English and keeping it for themselves. Among the Muslims, it was avoided completely. A result of this, between 1830 to 1870, was Hindus had a very huge, active, urban, English-speaking middle class, free-thinking modernists. Whereas among the Muslims, we did not have this middle class, but rather Muslims had only two classes, the Zamindar class and the peasant class. The peasant class was uneducated. The Zamindar class only was worried about retaining and maintaining their Zamindari. Observing this as a major challenge, and that Muslims must also benefit from the rule of English, from the British rule and being members of the British Empire, Sir Syed Ahmad Khan encouraged Muslims to give up their conservatism and adopt modernism. In fact, Syed Ahmad Khan even preached Muslims to become modernist Muslims. One classical example of a modernist Muslim would be, or Syed Ahmad Khan's style of Muslim would be, Muhammad Ali Jinnah. Jinnah Sahib, modernist, himself married to a Parsi. His daughter was a Parsi. He was a Muslim, but at the same time, he smoked tobacco. He was always on whiskey. He was a heavy smoker. He spoke English. He was not a 5-time praying namazi, and yet he was a Muslim. He believed in Quran on a practical or a realist perspective rather than being conservative. He avoided conservatism, just like Maulana Azad. While Maulana Azad never broke was not a drunkard, was not a smoker and all that, but Jinnah Sahib was that. Jinnah Sahib was a proper Western smoking, drinking, modernist Muslim free thinking. In fact, he was such free liberal that he never even encouraged his sister Fatima Jinnah to embrace hijabs and niqabs and become conservative and abide by strict Shariat and all that. Jinnah never really understood or neither really approached or attempted to impose Shariat among the Muslims anyway. Now, having said that, by 19th century, there were two classes. There are two groups. Hindus had three classes: the peasant class, the middle class, and the upper class. Whereas among the Muslims, there were only the two classes: the peasant class and the upper class. It is this Hindu middle class which eventually gave leadership for Indian national movement. Who are this Hindu middle class? Motilal Nehru, Dadabhai Naoroji, Badruddin Taibji, Firoz Shah Mehta, Kitty Talang, Nursonji Furdanji, although some of these were Parsis. We had Bal Gangadhar Tilak, Gopal Krishna Gokhale, Madan Mohan Malavya, Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi, Vittal Bhai Patel, Vallabh Bhai Patel, J.B. Kriplani, you name it. We Hindus started to have a huge supply of nationalist leaders who thought in Western democratic principles, Western philosophy, Western scientific process, rather than being absolutely conservatives, like how the Muslims were going. So by 1905, it was understood that Muslims need to have a middle class. Thanks to the Syed Ahmad Khan's 1875 Aligarh Muslim University or Mohammedan Anglo-Oriental College at that time, by 1900, a batch of Muslim middle class, although less in number, had come to existence. Now this batch of early Muslim leaders, Liaquat Ali Khan, Nawab Yar Jang, Mahbub Yar Jang, Hakim Ajmal Khan, Muhammad Ali Johar, Shaukat Ali, Amman B, Muhammad Ali Jinnah, these people were also part of Congress. Things went good. 1905, they worked together in the Swadeshi movement, worked very strong together, trying to promote Hindu-Muslim unity. In fact, one of the statements given about Muhammad Ali Jinnah in 1916 was, Jinnah Saab was, and Jinnah is the greatest advocate of Hindu-Muslim unity in 1916 Lucknow Pact. Sarojini Naidu herself said this about Jinnah. Now, unfortunately, Jinnah was also a very strong constitutionalist. In 1920, when Indian National Congress adopted the Khilafat resolution as well as a non-cooperation movement, Jinnah stood strongly against Khilafat movement. Himself being a Muslim, he was against the Khilafat movement because Jinnah believed two things. Khilafat was not our problem. Number two, Khilafat is a Turkish issue, has nothing to do directly or indirectly with the Indian Muslims, which obviously some of the Muslims of that period did not say. And Gandhi encouraged Khilafat movement because Gandhi believed that Khilafat movement would give an opportunity for Hindus and Muslims to come together and fight together as a united force against the British rule. Khilafat movement continued, non-cooperation continued, but unfortunately in 1922, non-cooperation movement was immediately effectively suspended. And by 1924, even the Khilafat movement could no longer be practical because the challenge was, while we Indians were fighting for Caliph to be reinstated in Turkey, the people of Turkey did not want the Caliph. Instead, they adopted democracy under Mustafa Kemal Pasha. So life went on like that. Things changed. Things altered a lot. Too many things changed. And by 1924, it looked like the interests of the Muslim middle class under the leadership of Jinnah remained substantially different to the interests of the Hindu middle class. Number one. Number two, the second place where Jinnah had strong objections to the mass movements of India was Jinnah believed that for mass movements to continue or to exist, we need to use religious tool, which is what Gandhi was doing, like Vaishnava Janato song or Raghupati Raghava Raja Rameshwar Allah Tero Naam. By calling the name of God, calling the name of identities of religion, Gandhi was trying to bring the masses outside the house. But at the same time, Jinnah was thinking in the long term. Jinnah believed that using religion as a tool to inculcate or invite people into politics would eventually backfire and lead to cracks within the society, because the interests of Muslims and interests of Hindus, as per Jinnah, remained substantially different. You must understand, Jinnah is coming from Syed Ahmad Khan's thought process, where he believed that Hindus and Muslims are two different nations. So Jinnah in 1920, Jinnah quit Congress, and he continued to be one of the strongest opponent of using religious identities in politics. Life went on like that. He slowly started to reorganize the All India Muslim League. He was originally not the founder, not the member of a Muslim League. It was only in 1922 that he really became a full active member of the Muslim League. And life went on in between. There were revolutionary movements, there were a few other movements which were happening. It was by 1931 Karachi Muslim League session that Muslim middle class leadership, under the leadership of Chaudhry Rahmat Ali Khan, really started to structuralize and formalize the concept of a Muslim state, a state for Muslims within India. Originally, that was the concept was. We call it, and Chaudhry Rahmat Ali Khan called it Pakistan. While Jinnah did not oppose it, he wasn't very convinced about the idea of Pakistan. Originally in 1931. Meanwhile, 1935 Government of India came. Muslims had separate electorate. In 1935-36, general elections were conducted. Jinnah's Muslim League fought in 498 reserved seats of Muslims, but only won 104, which was less than 1/4. With such a result, if Jinnah would even call himself or his party Muslim League the representative of Muslims of India, no one was going to trust him. And Jinnah knew this. So Jinnah Sahib and Liaquat Ali Khan, both of these went back to rebuilding Muslim League, and they contacted one of their senior leaders, Nawab of Pirpur, and asked him for recommendations. The Nawab of Pirpur gave recommendations of radicalizing Muslim League. In 1937, we call this the Pirpur recommendations. It was the Pirpur recommendations which suggested complete and comprehensive radicalization of All India Muslim League. They took Muslim League onto the path of complete radicalization, and Muslim League literally converted itself from a normal party into a complete pro-Muslim Islamized party. Now the funny part is, a secular, neutralist Jinnah Sahib, just for the sake of politics, converted himself into a radical Muslim. And the strangest thing is, he himself was not a radical Muslim, but he preached radical Muslim Islam to his followers. Muslim League started to consolidate its power at the grassroots level. And how did they do that? They used the mosques. They used the qazis of the mosques, the ulemas, and started to inculcate this concept of Pakistan into the people of India, and that too the poor people, the common people, the commoners. While this was happening, Congress did the blunder of ignoring what was happening. Congress did not react. Maybe because of their old friendships that they had with Jinnah Sahib, because Jinnah is an ex-congressman. Things went on like this, and finally, on 23rd of March 1941, Pakistan resolution was passed in Lahore under Muhammad Ali Jinnah's leadership. Chaudhry Rahmat Ali Khan, Liaquat Ali Khan, and all the Muslim middle class, which had now come from Aligarh school, supported this idea of Pakistan. Eventually, when Cabinet Mission Plan came in 1946, the Cabinet Mission Plan failed to recognize even the idea of Pakistan. That's when Jinnah took the final radical step, the Direct Action Day. 16th of August 1946, Jinnah instigated common Muslims to go and attack Hindus, create communal riots, and create so much of disturbance that Jinnah famously said, "Lad ke lenge Pakistan, cheen ke lenge Pakistan." The Jinnah of the 1946 is substantially, comprehensively different to the Jinnah of the 1920. Jinnah of the 1920 was a Western thinking, Western science, Western educated, lawyer, modernist, liberal Muslim. Jinnah of the 1946 was no less than any radical terrorist of today. And that was the problem with Jinnah Sahib. He eventually lost his track. He became completely radical. In fact, he started giving up his suits. He was known for his three-piece suits. He gave up his suits and started wearing sherwanis, started to project himself as Pakistan. And eventually, the state of Pakistan was forced onto India. And it was, if all relations between Hindus and Muslims were brought to a point where a Hindu could no longer live with a Muslim. A Sikh could no longer live with a Muslim. Now it was no longer between the political leaders. The movement of Pakistan had moved, by 1947, had moved into common people. Eventually, Jinnah was adamant, like a school kid, arrogant, adamant that he needs that Pakistan, where all the Muslim population, wherever Muslims live, those areas must be Pakistan. The problem was Muslims were majority on two different sides of the country. That's the reason why Britishers tried to avoid creating Pakistan initially, because it actually made no sense to have a country divided between a country. But Jinnah was adamant, and finally Pakistan was created. Now this is where the problem comes. See, to create a nation, you need something in common. Common language or common culture, common religion, common belief, common region, at least common history. Now what does Pakistan have at the time of independence in 1947? They don't have a common language because the West Pakistan speaks Punjabi, East Pakistan speaks Bengali. They don't have a common culture because West Pakistanis are Punjabi by culture, East Pakistanis were Bengali by culture. West Pakistanis were Punjabi by culture, East Pakistanis were Bengali by culture. They don't have a common religion because there was Shia Sunni mix in them, along with Ahmadiyas. They don't even have a common history. In fact, Pakistan did not even claim history from Indus Valley civilization, but rather tried to project its nationality or its originality from the Turkey, from Turkish. That's where Pakistan failed. Second part where the Pakistan failed is the two-nation theory's very idea. See, one must understand. Sam Worthington, a democratic thinker, famously quoted once, "Democracy and nation cannot be established without the systems of democracy." The Pakistan which Jinnah was establishing had no idea. It was built on a myth and a mythological concept that Hindus and Muslims are different and they can't live together. Whereas history has proven that we've lived together for centuries before British. And the final blunder Jinnah did is Jinnah did not leave a Jinnah to give guidance to the state of Pakistan. Nobody was like Jinnah. All the people who came in Pakistan after Jinnah were a complete comprehensive failure who had zero belief on democracy, zero belief on minorities, and they completely radicalized the state of Pakistan. And that's why, purely on the basis of analysis, I keep saying always, Pakistan is a myth. And Hans Morgenthau, a realist political thinker, was not wrong when he said that the state of Pakistan is bound to fail. It is never bound to succeed. Now, where does the problem continue even today? Even today, because of Islamic conservatism, that is the idea that Muslims or some regions and even within India send their children only to madrasas and maktabs. The problem with this comes is we are not able to create a Muslim middle class. A Muslim middle class doesn't exist even today in proportional to the numbers of their population when you compare with Hindus. Hindus have a middle class. That's why a lot of members of parliament today in India are Hindus. Often people complain saying there are no Muslim representatives or not enough Muslim representatives in the Parliament of India. Who are the representatives? They are the middle class. Hindus have an enough supply of middle class. Where are the middle class of Muslims? We need English educated, liberal, free thinking, constitution adapting Hindus or Muslims. That's not happening. That's the reason, even in modern India, free India, we have less number of Muslim leadership. An exception is Asaduddin Owaisi of Hyderabad. He is modern, barrister, free-thinking, middle-class, Aligarh type guy. Who, you see, he places politics through religion, through region, through complaint. But he is not against India. At least he has not spoken against India. I've not heard it. I'm being a Hyderabadi, I'm telling you that. Now, we need, if Muslims have to be uplifted in India, we need a middle-class Muslim community. And this has to come from the Muslim community herself. The Waqf boards, the Muslim personal law boards have to ensure that their communities encourage Muslim people to study modern science, Western philosophy, adapt liberalism, become part of the modern world. You can't live in the medieval era and expect rights of the modern era. That's the reality of the Muslim middle class. That's a small podcast from me today, guys. Just highlighting about why we do not have enough Muslim leaderships today, even in modern India. And we'll continue with one more podcast. I'll talk about Sri Lankan issue in the next challenge. In the next video, I'll be talking about the Sri Lankan Tamil issue and where it all started, how it all went, and where things went wrong, and why Elam is a failure. Subscribe to the channel down the glare and click on the bell icon, and keep following me on YouTube at Real Motivation Monk. You can also follow my channel on Instagram at Real Motivation Monk. No space, at Real Motivation Monk. And on Telegram, if you ever want to talk to me, you can join my Telegram group at Plus Students. No space in between, at Plus Students. See you guys. This is your guy, RK. I'll talk to you in the next video. Bye-bye.